Well, hello, everyone. On behalf of Better Business Bureau, I want to say thank you for joining us. I know some people are still trickling in and getting their microphones all muted and set up, but it looks like we have a good turnout. We're really excited. Go ahead if you want to and write in your name, what business you're with, where you're from in the chat, just so people can kind of see the community that's here while we're social distancing from one another. But we're talking today about how to respond to crisis with compassion and courage and creativity. And we have expert guest Chris Field with us, and I'm super excited to have him. But before we dive in, I do want to let you know that BBB has a whole set of resources available to you, small businesses, and these webinars are one of those resources where we're going to be bringing in experts to help you navigate these trying times. We also have a dedicated page at bbb.org/coronavirus business with all the latest information. And of course, we always offer free business consultations. So with that said, it looks like everyone at this point is just about in the room. So I want to introduce our guest, and his name is Chris Field. He's probably in contention for the most interesting man in the world, if you haven't heard about him already. Chris is the executive director for Mercy Project, which is an award-winning nonprofit doing work in Ghana. He's the author of a book called Disruption for Good, which is a fantastic parallel to some of the things we're talking about today. He's a really in-demand keynote speaker. He is a lecturer in business at Texas A&M University. He founded the #1 ranked marathon in the state of Texas, and he's just an expert in social media strategy and has worked with well over 100 businesses. And so really, he is just a really valuable resource to help us navigate these trying times. So we're excited to have him. Chris, are you there? Can you hear me all right?
Yep, I can hear you great.
Awesome. Well, we are really glad that you could join us. Everyone is kind of experiencing unprecedented disruption and change to their schedule, change to their daily lives right now. And I know that you work with tons of small businesses and you're really involved with a lot of different areas of the marketplace. And I was wondering if you could just start us off by kind of painting a picture of what is going on in the marketplace. How are businesses responding or not responding? What is the average small business owner thinking and doing right now from your perspective?
Yeah, this is a great question. And David, thanks for having me on today. It's honestly an honor to be here and to be able to share just a little bit of time with small business owners and people across the state of Texas. I think the first thing that strikes me right now, and I'm having conversations with all these small business owners, is everyone's feeling completely overwhelmed. And there's almost a sense where people want to explain away, like, well, I don't know why I'm feeling so overwhelmed. And it's like, no, this is a really, really big deal. I mean, this is truly a historical moment. People are likening COVID-19 to September 11th. And the two events, 1 hour time frame. We had both of those planes that hit the World Trade Center towers, whereas COVID rolled in like a slow fog. And in doing so, for a lot of us, it kind of caught us by surprise. We didn't see the first reports coming out of Wuhan or the reports coming out of Italy or even the first reports out of Washington here in the United States and think, oh my gosh, this is going to change everything forever, like we did when we saw the planes hit the World Trade Center towers. And so first of all, I'm not a therapist or a counselor, but I want to say, if you're feeling like, man, this feels like a huge, overwhelming sort of thing, it's okay that you're feeling like that. This is a huge, huge thing. And this is something that, for one of the first times in decades, the whole world is experiencing together. I mean, my employees in Ghana, Africa, are calling and asking us about how we're handling certain things in America. And so even though these two countries couldn't be more different in many ways, we're all on a level playing field when it comes to this. And so here's what I'm seeing and hearing from small business owners. There's a lot of fear right now. There's not just fear because we're having to close down. There's not just fear because we're having to lay employees off. There's not just fear because we don't have the online presence we knew we should have built 3 years ago, but now we realize we don't have it because we don't have foot traffic anymore. There's fear because we don't know what's next. And we don't know if this cities have embraced or chosen to put in effect. We don't know if it's going to last a month or 6 months. And we don't know when we get to the other side of this, what our economy is going to look like, if buyers' decision-making will have changed. Are people still going to want the same products that they wanted before? What's going to happen to the average person's disposable income? What's going to happen to the customers of mine that used to buy my product? I mean, there's all of these questions. And so I think most small business owners right now fall into one of two categories. They've made a hard pivot to go ahead and continue providing value and adding service to whatever percent of their customer base that they can. Closed sign on the door, literally and in many cases figuratively, and they're just kind of sitting back waiting to see what's going to happen. And one of those options is better than the other. And that is, now is not the time for us to hide in the turtle shell. Now is not the time for us to disappear. Now is not the time for us to go off our customers' radar. What our customers need from us right now, we'll talk more about this later, Dave, but what I'm encouraging my small business owners is we have to keep adding value to our customers' lives. We have to keep showing them that we're in this boat with them, because guess what? Our customers are scared too. Our customers are employees of organizations that aren't sure where their next paycheck is going to come from, that aren't sure when this thing is going to be over. The same news reports that you're watching, your customers are watching too. So that's what I'm seeing and hearing from my small business owners is a lot of it is around that, hey, this is unprecedented and we're not sure what to do. And I just want to affirm and say, you and everybody else is not sure what to do. And if that's the way you feel, you are in no way by yourself, and by no chance are you going to need to navigate this alone, because everybody else is in the same exact situation with you. And here's the great news in this. Just the fact that you're logging on to this webinar says that you care enough about the success of your business to do what needs to be done next. And that's going to put you ahead of many, many, many other small business owners who are going to stay hidden away in that turtle shell and just hope that when this thing passes, they can flip the sign back on the door and life's going to go back to normal. And that's just not the way this is going to happen.
Well, and I think something that you touched on, Chris, is that it seems like there's a bit of a spectrum where there's some businesses that kind of go into fight or flight mode, and there's the response of, I'm afraid, I'm kind of going to pull back and press the pause button until the dust settles. And then there's this other kind of category of business which is responding a lot more proactively. Can you give us a little bit more of a caricature of that second business, those ones that aren't turtling up, as you said, and they are responding with more proactive measures?
Yeah, so the businesses, so one of my businesses that I work with a lot of small business owners is I run a company that does social media for small businesses. And so as soon as everyone sort of realized, this is about to be a really big deal, all my clients started calling me before I could even call them. And they're like, Chris, what do we do? What's our message? And the first thing was, it was very dependent on what kind of business they ran. I mean, I had some businesses, I have one business, they are a doctor service. So they go to people's houses to provide medical attention. This is an unbelievable opportunity for them because no one wants to leave their house right now to walk into an emergency room. Even if they have health insurance, people are not wanting to go to the doctor's office. And so for this guy, in his very small direct primary care practice, it's an enormous opportunity for him to show people how convenient and how just much time it saves and how comfortable it is to have a doctor see you in your own home. Then I've got other businesses, a couple of custom home builders who build $1 million homes, that they're like, man, I've already lost 2 or 3 clients that we were in an agreement on moving forward on their process, and now they just lost 1/3 of their 401ks, and they're not going to build this $1 million house. They're just going to stay in the house that they've been in for the last 20 years. And then in the middle, I've got a bunch of restaurants who are having to pivot from dining in place, dining inside, to now how do we do takeout, right? And how do we do delivery? And some of these are obvious, like a pizza place, they're already doing delivery. Some of them are a fast food place, they're already doing drive-through. But some, they've never done delivery or takeout in their life. So they're having to shift all of their resources to takeout. And so I think for each individual business, you have to be honest about where do you fall in the spectrum of COVID very practically affects your business. And the businesses that have been asked to shelter in place or asked to close down so that people can shelter in place and you really cannot sell your product right now, that's when the digital piece becomes so critical. Are we still communicating with our customers? Are we still telling a good story? Are we still showing them and reminding them that we're in the boat with them, that we're in this together? And, you know, to use the name of this webinar, Dave, which you came up with, and I love it, and that is, are we responding in a way that what our customers is seeing from us is compassion, what they're seeing from us is courage, and what they're seeing from us is creativity? Businesses, they do feel that compassion, but they're not sure how to show it. And they do feel that feeling of being in the boat with other people, but they're not sure what to do with that. And they're thinking, hey, I run a cleaner. I run a business that does paint for companies. I run a roofing company. I run a plumbing company. I mean, I run a car dealership. How could I make a real difference in the lives of people? You know, all I know how to do typically is make money and give it to charity. Well, now I'm not making any money, so I don't have anything to give to charity. What am I supposed to do? And this is where I think it's so important to understand creativity is our most valuable currency. Think about, I don't know how you're going to pay your employees. I understand. I'm in the same boat. Creativity is our most valuable currency in a crisis. And that means, what can we do that nobody else is doing? How can we leverage the assets we do have, the people we do have, the skills we do have? How can we leverage those to show our community, hey guys, we're in this boat with you. We care about you. You matter to us. And not only do we care about you, we're putting our money, quote unquote, our time, our skills, our gifts, our talents, we're putting our money where our mouth is. And we're going to show up and we're going to help people because, yeah, we're scared. And yeah, we're not sure. We know there's people that need help. And when there's people that need help, we're the kind of business that shows up to help. And so, you know, to me, it doesn't matter what that looks like. There are so many different ways that can look like, and we can talk about some of those. I'm going to give you some real actionable stuff. I'm not going to leave you in the clouds. But the truth is, your business, no matter what kind of business it is, if I sat in a room with you for 2 hours, I could reveal dozens of creative ways you can engage the community right now. But we can't miss the forest through the trees. Sometimes we're so close to our business that we can't see those assets we have to bring to the table. And this is where we've got to really get creative. And the courageous piece means we just got to show up. We got to poke our head out of that turtle shell. We got to stop living on fear. You know, the number one most underlined quote in my entire book is that my life was changed forever when my willingness to dream and take chances outgrew my fear of failure. So I'll say it one more time in case somebody wants to write it down. And my life was changed forever when my willingness to dream and take chances outgrew my fear of failure. And I would tweak that a tiny bit for all the business owners watching. And here's what I would say. Your COVID-19 experience can change forever when you're willing to dream and take chances more.
Well, and Chris, it sounds like a lot of the things that you're talking about kind of touch on that theme of resilience. And, you know, just this morning I was reading an article in the Harvard Business Review that was saying resilience is the #1 indicator of whether a business is going to succeed or fail, not just in a crisis, but period. Their ability to adapt and pivot and change. And as you said, use creativity as currency, especially in a time like this. Can you maybe give us an idea of, and I know we've talked about this previously, some stories of how people are doing this. I do want to get into those action steps, those tangible, look, if you're a business, you can do this, this, and this. But before we do, can you give us some stories of how some businesses or people have responded already that might be helpful for businesses trying to know, where do I even start? How do I move out of that turtle shell place?
Yeah, so let me just give you a personal example, just so you guys know that I'm willing to put my money where I have 4 young kids, 10, 8, 5, and 2. And when we heard they weren't going to be in school for a few weeks, I saw how big my wife's eyes got. And all of a sudden I was like, oh boy. And I know we have some moms right now with kids that are at home right now. And you moms and dads who are crushing this work thing with your kids, I just want to tell you, I have so much respect for you. But I immediately thought, okay, we have a problem here. And that is parents who have been sending their kids to public or private schools, they're not attuned and used to having their kids at home. And they're going to be overwhelmed with, what am I supposed to do with my kid all day? How do I find little pockets of time to be able to work on my own business or nobody can leave their house, or we're not supposed to be leaving our house. I've got some friends that are talented, creative, cool, funny, quirky. What if I call them and what if I get them to sign up to do a live virtual field trip? And what if I go on social media, Facebook, and I invite families that want to have an activity for their kids to tune in every day at 2 o'clock Central. And the kids are going to get to go on a different virtual field trip every single day where they'll learn something about a business or about some practice that they've never heard of before. And I thought, you know, I might get 50 of my friends that want to do this, 100 of my friends. Well, 25,000 people told me they wanted to do it in the first 4. Our first is my friend who's an exotic animal veterinarian, and she went out to some giraffes in Central Texas. And I had 12,000 people log into the Facebook Live. And 600,000 people have watched the video in the first 2 weeks. And here's my point. I'm not an educator. I do not have a staff. I do not have a video camera. I do not have people that are experts in creating online content. I had a brain, a willingness to put myself out there, and internet access, which is the same thing that all 3 people, every person listening to this, all of us have those. It's just turned into like a whole thing. Like just this afternoon, we did my favorite pizza place here in town, did a tour for the kids from throwing the pizza dough into the air all the way through to pizza. And now I have businesses that are sponsoring these afternoon adventures, and it's allowed me to grow the resource. And I'm still having hundreds of parents logging in every single day, and the videos are still getting thousands and tens of thousands of views. And so that's just one way that I said, hey, there's a gap in the market. And that is, parents aren't sure where to turn to get their kids good content. If I tell them I'm going to give their kids good, highly educational content every single day, I know people are going to tune in. I just don't know how many. All right, let me give you some other examples, though, of other businesses that are doing stuff like this. I got a car dealership in my town. It's a high-end car dealership, very expensive cars. You can imagine the foreign brand, okay? Well, they are, like every business right now, nobody's going to buy $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 cars. What they put out very quickly on social media was that they were going, most of their customers are older. They have an older demographic of customers that's skewed older. And you know who's most affected by COVID right now. It's people who are 60 and above are the ones that are most at risk for COVID to be fatal. So this is a population that's really, really making sure they're staying at home, right? So we've got staff members going around town, and they want to grocery shop and pick up prescriptions and anything you need them to do. Send us a message, call up to the dealership, and we'll have these guys leave whatever you need on your front porch. Now listen, I want to be clear about something. There's already services that do this. HEB delivers, Ship delivers, but you know what a 70-year-old doesn't know? They don't know HEB or Ship. You know who they do know? They know their car dealer because they spent $60,000. And you know who they trust? They trust their car dealer. Well, hopefully they trust their car dealer, right? Hopefully the car dealer has done a good enough job in that relationship with the service department and the oil changes and all of name who calls them. And when they call and they say, hey, Mr. Smith, we got somebody that's going to be in your neighborhood today dropping off some groceries at HEB. Is there anything that you needed? And the likelihood that that person's going to take them up on that is going to be just that much higher. Let me give you a counter example of another car dealership in my town that my own 85-year-old grandfather who bought a new car 6 months ago, he called me and I was asking him how he was doing and if they needed anything. And he said, no, I almost called you yesterday because I needed an oil change. And I said, oh my gosh, you should have called me. I totally would have taken your car in for an oil change. And he said, I was due for my service and we could lose our warranty if I didn't do it. And so I had to take it in. He's 85 years old, guys. And a car dealership called him and made him feel worried that if he didn't come get an oil change sitting in their freaking service department with all those germs, that he might lose the warranty on his car. And I about lost my mind. And I immediately made the decision that I would never do business with that dealership again. And I would keep everybody I knew from the same, because if you're going to risk a $40 oil change over an 85-year-old's health, that is the opposite of using creativity. They should have offered to drive to his house and change the oil in his driveway. They did the shit, it's buck. And who wants to be a part of the community for the next 10 years? And there's a huge difference between those things. And sometimes we trade the dollar today to do the next right thing. And that next right thing is going to get us $100 over the next few years. And we have to be honest about making some of those decisions. So, man, I could tell you 1,000 stories, Dave. I mean, I'm studying this every single day. I'm watching how businesses are responding. I'm watching what they're doing. I'm encouraging all my businesses. I've got a fast food restaurant that they've declared this week Frontline Healthcare Worker Week. And even though they're hurting just like everybody else, any healthcare worker that comes through their drive-thru gets a free menu item. And it's just their way of saying, hey, we see you and we know this is hard and you are doing an unbelievably brave thing and we love you. And of course, it's Great Pub. My doctor, who's the direct primary care guy, just today we posted, and he said on his Facebook page, he's offering a pay what you can for anybody who's lost their job because of COVID. The post has gone viral for his page. And then my last example, I've got one other business owner. He doesn't really have a service to offer, any of the, like a direct service because of what he does. But he made a deal today where he said he wanted to help charities that are helping people affected by COVID. So he made a commitment that anyone who liked his Facebook page and commented on his post with their favorite charity, he would personally make a donation to that charity. He's grown his Facebook page today by 50% in one day. And now he's going to have all those people on his platform that he gets to be an expert to when it is the right time for his service, because today's not the day to sell his service. With what he does around finance and money, today's not exactly the right day. It's always the right day to do the right thing and to add people to his platform so that when the time is right, he can show them what he does.
Well, and really all those stories, they touch on that idea of compassion and courage and creativity. It sounds like these people have this desire to help where that compassion fits in. They're having that courage and that willingness to step out and take a risk, even knowing that their own finances are kind of in jeopardy or feel unstable. And there's that creative element where they're looking for ways to do that. And I think you touched on something that really sits at the heart of this whole conversation, which is people and customers, they're going to remember how businesses respond. They're going to remember those businesses that went out of their way to help and serve and support. And they're going to remember those businesses that did the opposite. And so I think that puts a lot of people, and I think a lot of folks understand that these times polarize people. And in the midst of the bad, there are so many people helping or wanting to help. And for that average small business or that organization that's involved in the community, that wants to help, and they're not sure how to get there, what are some tangible action steps that they can take to move to that place? If they let's say they already have that compassion, maybe they even have the courage, they have the desire and maybe the willingness, but they're just not sure how to move forward. What are some really tangible action steps that everyone listening to this and that will listen to this later on can take today to get to that place?
So I think the first thing is to look at what are those assets that we have as a business. What do we do that nobody else does or that very few other people do? What is that skill that we have? So let's say you're a plumber. Well, you have a skill that is still going to be needed during a global pandemic. And so obviously making it clear to your customers, like we've gotten the 3 million emails of people saying, hey, we're washing our hands every time we get in the truck, we're wearing gloves, we're using hand sanitizer. That's all fine. But if I were a plumber and I was going to my scheduled calls that day, I'd also pull a list of my previous customers that were over 70 years old in that same part of town. And I'd reach out to them and say, I'm going to be in your neighborhood this afternoon working on somebody's toilet over on Smith Street. I just wanted to see when I'm over there if there was anything you might need while I'm on your side of town. That's the lowest hanging fruit I could ever possibly offer up to anybody. But let's say we've got another service or a skill that could be critical right now for frontline healthcare workers. Maybe we've got a sewing business or the ability to manufacture. Well, reaching out to our local hospitals and saying, hey, do you guys need masks? I'm hearing about masks, but I don't know if you actually need these things or not. Is this something you might actually need? Could you show me an example of a supplier? Or maybe you have access to supply chain that allows you to get some stuff. Maybe you've got access to huge trucks because you're a moving company and you don't have any business right now because people aren't moving. But what you know is that HEB or your local grocer who doesn't have the supply chain of HEB, even more importantly, they'd love to be getting more stuff in, but they don't have access to it. The truth is, we've all got a set of strengths and talents, something that we do really, really well. And what we need to do is take that thing we do really well and look at the problems that COVID has presented and ask how our unique abilities can solve this unique problem. And I knew that when I went on Facebook, what I had was a pretty loyal following of people. They usually, when I brought them a good idea, they usually jumped in pretty quick and shared it with their friends. And I knew there was a bunch of parents out there who didn't know how to educate their kids or didn't know how to entertain their kids with educational material, I should say. And so I offered that app as a way to solve a problem in the marketplace. Now, I have a restaurant here in town. They're not my restaurant. I work with them. I know the owner, a great guy, but here's what they did. He's got a supply chain because of all the stuff they buy at their restaurant that he was able to get basic groceries, just like a grocery store. So within 3 or 4 days, he didn't just start selling his food through the drive-through. He started selling milk and eggs and bread and, wait for it, $4 rolls of commercial toilet paper. Okay? So he, within just a few days, he made a very quick pivot to say, hey, don't just come get your soups and salads and sandwiches here. We've also got basic groceries and golden toilet paper. I mean, you're going to want to come shop here. Listen, what's awesome to me about this story is this. The first thing he tried to do was to sell gift cards, and he called them bonds for his restaurant, where he was going to pay you back 10% more than you actually spent on the gift card. And you know what? It didn't go that well. Even though he put it out there really quickly, the market just wasn't going to be able to respond in a way to keep his staff intact like he wanted. He didn't say, oh gosh, I tried. He went to the next thing. So I would say now is all the time about pivoting, testing, change or die, change or die, change or die. And now is the time to pivot, to change, not to get married to anything. Look at those assets that you have. Look who in the community needs those things. Hospitals, other small business owners, and any, educators, teachers. There's so many people right now who are overwhelmed. And the value I have, I'm a connector. Like, that's my gift, is connecting people. And so even in my town, I connected our 2 largest nonprofits and kind of lit a little fire under them. And we started a COVID community relief fund to help small businesses and individuals who'd been laid off from COVID. And that relief fund has already gotten the partnership of our 2 cities, and just from the general public, donations and private businesses that have donated, we've already raised over $500,000 in less than 2 weeks. And I didn't contribute $1 to this. I want to be clear. I've got my own stuff I'm giving my personal money to. But what I did was connect. I cast a vision and I brought people together. And so every business owner right now has the opportunity to think about, what assets do I have right now? What assets does my town have right now? How do I typically solve people's problems? And maybe this is going to be different than that, because the market may not need our exact solution. But you know what? If I had a cleaning business right now, and I knew people weren't letting me come in their homes because they were worried about COVID, I would be figuring out if there are hotels, or if there are doctors' offices, or if there are hospitals who are short-staffed, or even if there are doctors who are already bringing the germs from COVID home every single night, that I could volunteer to do a service and come into their house. And I would go on social media and I would have people recommend their favorite doctor or someone they think deserves a free house cleaning. And I would just bite the bullet in order to stay relevant, in order to stay out there in front of people. And if I go crush it with this person whose house I'm cleaning, you know what's probably going to happen. There's a very good chance that person's going to maintain our service, and that they're going to be so happy with what we do that they're going to want to come, use us when things get back to normal, or even still, right now. And so we just want to look down that list of things and say, what unique skills do I have that I can drive value to the general public? And that's the creativity, is adding value to other people's lives.
Well, and Chris, it's something that you referenced earlier, as we're having this conversation about action steps, that I think is really important, is this idea of thinking in the long term. Because it seems like when you think short term, you kind of move into that panic mode of, how can I just manage for the next 30 days? But when people are taking that long-term approach of, I know I'm going to lose money by offering this free service now, or this discount now, that can be really intimidating. But it almost, if I'm hearing you right, saying that really has its own kind of built-in ROI, that when you value your customers and you value people and you value your community over the bottom line, in the short term, that might take a toll, but it actually will play out over the long term in terms of customer loyalty, brand loyalty, and kind of in that sense. Is that right?
Yeah. And here's the good news. The businesses that have been born out of crises are too measurable to count, because what crises does is it forces us to get lean. When things go wrong and when things go poorly and when things get hard, it forces us to be honest about what we really do best. And when we lean up and when we focus up, that's when we get really tight about what our mission is. That's when we start to pay attention to some of those things that we've just neglected. And I was telling you the other day, this is the perfect time for business owners to really be honest about how much they've been working on the business versus in the business. And that is those little things that we've just not gotten to, like social media. You have no idea how many businesses have called me in the last month and said, Chris, help us. We don't have anybody on our Facebook page. And I'm like, I'll help you, but we should have been doing this a year ago. We should have been building our social media a year ago. Now we can still do better than what we have now. But now is the time to get active on social media. Now is the time to build out that CRM. Now is the time to look back at all those contracts we've lost and be honest about why we've lost those contracts and have we followed up with those people. Now is the time to try to tighten up and get some quotes and bids from other people in our supply chain to see if we can't save 3%, 5%, 7%. Now the time is, if we're able to keep our employees on board and we're paying them, let's bring them in for training. Let's bring them in for that onboarding that we never got to because we were so busy rushing them out to do the work of our business that we know we didn't onboard them very well. Now's the time to clean up our books. Now's the time to clean up our marketing message. Now's the time to call a photographer. You know who doesn't have any work right now? A photographer. You want to get a great deal on that commercial shoot that you've been putting off all these years? Bring a photographer in, because you know what? Nobody's in your business right now anyways. So come in, make a deal, trade services, get creative, get those high quality shots that you've been needing to get for a long time. I'm just telling you, every day we can be making our business better, even if we're not front-facing clients every single day. And that is, instead of giving up, we pivot and we go to those things we know we should have been doing better. We know all along. And I would start with this: our hiring processes, our onboarding processes, our ongoing training processes, our employee appreciation processes, our customer appreciation processes, how we're talking to customers that aren't buyers right now. In the fundraising world, we would call that stewardship. How are we stewarding those customers so that the only time we talk to them is not when we need them to buy, but that we have these other touch points? Look, if I had nothing else to do right now, and I had a list of 500 customers that had used my service in the last year, I'd call every single one of them and ask them how they're doing. I'd call every single one and say, hey, this is Chris Field. I want to check in with you and your family. I know this is a really hard time, and I just want to see how you guys are doing right now. And I wanted to let you know that as I've reflected on everything that's happening, I've been so grateful for this business and my customers like you. And if there's anything I could do to help you, and if there's anything I can do to be praying for your family and just to let you know we care about you and you matter to us, I just want you to know that you're the reason we have a business. And I just want to thank you. And I know we're all going to get through this together. You know what? I haven't had a single person call me and do that. Now, I'm not saying everybody owes me that. I'm saying that's a market opportunity for the person who is willing to do that, because people's phone calls are not getting blown up right now. Send a text if that's your preferred method of communication, but make sure it's not a spam text. Make sure it's not the same one going to 672 people. Take the time to do it right. Start a newsletter, create value, record some podcasts, make a webinar, do whatever you can right now to add value to people's lives so that when things get back to normal, because we know at some point things are going to get back to normal, we've positioned ourselves to take the next step with our customers.
Well, and something I hear you saying is to focus on what you can control, because as I've been interacting with small businesses, one of the most devastating elements of this whole process is that feeling like they've lost control. You know, if if there's a policy in their area where their business isn't allowed to be open, I hear them saying, I can't do anything. I don't know what to do. And what I hear you saying is, view this through the lens of an opportunity to focus on things that maybe you haven't been able to focus on as you're trying to handle those day-to-day operations, and look for new creative ways to pivot and change your organization. And I think that's a really valuable message. And it's very empowering as well to tell someone that there is something you can do. And if you focus on those things that you can control, that will pay dividends down the road. Knowing that when we face these crises, the default reaction is to kind of turtle up. It is to go into protective mode where, we don't self-destruct or something along those lines. I think that's a really valuable message. Something I think I want to ask is, what do you think are some of the things that prevent people from responding proactively or positively in these scenarios? For those businesses that aren't being proactive, what do you think plays into that? I know we've touched on this a little bit, but do you have anything to add there?
I honestly think it's fear. I think that we are not sure that what we might do is going to work, and so we don't do it. And my take on that, 100% of the things we don't do fail. And if we want to make an office reference here, Michael Scott quoting Wayne Gretzky and claiming it as his own quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I think that what we sometimes get worried about is that our idea is not good enough. It's not sexy enough. It's not big enough. It's not going to help enough people. And so we don't do it. And here's the good news here is the market's going to tell you if your idea is a good idea. And if it's not a good idea and you don't sell enough bonds, gift certificates, then you move to the next idea. And you just don't get so married to one idea. But we are so afraid of failing that we don't even try. And for me, every single human being affected by COVID has some opportunity to go out and to love their neighbors well. And if there's a way to do that in the name of our business and tied in to what our business does to solve people's problems on a daily basis, why would we not take that opportunity, man? I mean, I want people to know that in times of need, in times of pain, in times of trouble, in times of difficulty, that our business is going to step up. And yeah, man, we're taking the hit just like everybody else. Look, I run a nonprofit. I don't know how our funding is going to go the rest of the year. I really don't. And that problem's not going to be made clear to me, that solution. I won't know the answer to that for months and months and months. And so you know what I'm doing in the month of April when I can't be out fundraising? I'm writing a book, because that book is going to get me a bigger platform, more people that I can tell the story to. I had 7 keynote speeches I was supposed to do in March and April across the whole country. Every single one of them got canceled. Okay, I'm on here with a webinar right now, talking to you guys, making new connections, meeting new people, hopefully solving problems in new ways. And my hope is now I'm going to have some relationship with some of you long term, because I showed up and we got connected and you were able to see that there's value in some of these conversations. And so, man, we got to not be fearful of putting ourselves out there, pivoting, making the move. And if it doesn't work, we go to the next thing. And that is going to be what separates who comes out of this ready to go and who comes out of this looking like they're seeing sunlight for the first time in 2 years.
Well, and as you're talking about that idea of fear, it makes me think of that quote by Einstein. I guess we're quoting Michael Scott and Einstein in the same conversation here, but
similar.
It was something along the lines of life is like a bicycle. You have to keep moving to stay up. And, if people do get in that fear mode where they just stop, you fall over. And so that resilience, it makes sense that that's such a key component to that response. And I want to let people know, those of us that are with us, if you want to start writing in your questions into the chat, as Chris answers this final question, I'll go ahead and field those questions as well, and we can send those to him with the time that are remaining. But Chris, as we're kind of closing in on this final question here, what would you say, if you're facing eye to eye with every business owner or organizational leader that's on this call with us right now, what do you think is the single most important takeaway for them? What is the one thing that they need to remember to respond well?
I would say that you are capable of so much more than you even believe you are capable of doing. And you need to clear some space. You need to turn off the news. You need to shut your computer. You need to shut your phone off. You need to sit in a quiet room. You need to remember why you got into business in the first place. You need to remember why you want to help people. And then you need to ask, I know times are different, but what can I do today, tomorrow, next week, and next month to add value to lives of people that I care about? And you need to give yourself space to come up with those creative answers. And here's the truth. Creativity and courage and compassion are all muscles. And there's not some people who are born with bigger muscles on those three things than others. It's the people who exercise those muscles the most. If you want to be compassionate, exercise compassion. If you want to be courageous, then put yourself out there. If you want to be creative, then force yourself to think outside the box. Yes, some people are more naturally creative than others, but the people who are not creative are the people who never try to be creative. You can't be as creative as the most creative person, but you can be more creative than you were yesterday. You can be more courageous than you were yesterday. You can be more compassionate than you were yesterday. And we've got to make those decisions, and we have to choose. We are not witnesses to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are participants. We are not spectators on this thing. We're participants. So we need to get out of the stands, and we need to walk out onto the field, or as Brene Brown would say, into the arena, and we need to start taking our hits and stop sitting up and waiting like, well, I guess this will pass when it passes. Yeah, it will. And by then it's going to be too late. And so we got to say, look, I cannot control everything, but I'm going to control every single thing I can. One of my favorite professors used to say this, and that's the last thing I'll say, Dave. We can go to questions. Our story explains us, but it does not excuse us. So we are where we are today with COVID-19 for a lot of reasons we can't control, and that explains why we are where we are today. But it does not excuse our unwillingness to move forward, right? It explains why we're here. It does not excuse us being paralyzed for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month. That we don't get to choose that option. We are not spectators, we're participants. And we got to own that, man. I mean, we got to own that and say, I can't control it all, but I'm going to do what I can with what I can control.
That's a really great message, Chris. And it looks like two of the questions that we have kind of are parallel to each other, so I might even just blend them into one. But it's basically, can you give us a little bit more idea about what you do and what's the name of your book? People seem to really are valuing that content that you're sharing.
Yeah, so the book is called Disrupting for Good, and it's available on Amazon. You can find more info about me and I guess my speaking and some of that stuff at meetchrisfield.com. And that's where I run the speaking piece of what I do. And then my social media small business consulting company is called Virtual Campfires, and that's just virtualcampfires.com. So certainly, happy to talk to any of you. I want you to know that I believe in what you do, and I think what you're doing is so important. Small businesses are the lifeblood of the American economy, and I really believe in your ability to be compassionate. I believe in your ability to be courageous, and I really believe in your ability to be creative. But if there's a way I can help you with that, certainly I'm always happy to do that.
And I want to leave a little bit of a window here in case we have any other questions, but just to follow up on what Chris said, he is available for keynote speeches. I know that's a big part of where you spend your time and energy. And so it sounds like if someone wants to contact you, the best way is to go to chrisfield.com. Is that right? Meetchrisfield.com.
Yeah, that's my speaking website. And honestly, a lot of what I'm doing right now, David, is just like this. I'm doing these kind of webinars. And so, even I've done things before lately where I've come in and done like employee training on a webinar, system, right? Where, I can't sit face to face and the employees can't even sit face to face. They're supposed to be 6 feet apart, but we can still help them think creatively and learn to solve problems. And I'll tell you what, your employees can be some of the best resources of problem solving for you, especially if they're on the ground in the trenches. You going to them and saying, hey, tell me 3, 4, 5, 6 things customers have asked us to do that we typically haven't done because it falls outside our scope. And let's see if we can find a way to solve that problem for them in the next few weeks and months.
Well, that's great. And I want to say thank you, Chris, for coming on. That was incredible content. I know I was excited leading up to this as we were having conversations between the two of us, because I knew how important this message was as everyone was trying to navigate these really trying times. And here at the Better Business Bureau, we've been trying to find ways to resource small businesses and continue to support you in these difficult times. And so hopefully this was a helpful message in the process of that. We want to encourage you to continue tracking the situation at bbb.org/coronavirus-business, as well as our social media pages for different information. If there's any other questions, you know how to contact Chris. You can contact myself as well at dlaws@waco.bbb.org. But with that, we will tell everyone thank you. Stay safe and have a great week.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.